All right. In this walkthrough, we're going to look at putting a little bit of what's called basic authentication, a little bit of protection, if you will, on who gets to visit our synopsis. You know, we can maybe pretend that we work in a business and these synopses are really only meant for people who have logins and that we've authorized to be able to authenticate and see them. Or maybe we're making money on this and we want to set up a password structure. Most websites, the password structure is handled with databases and outside, but every web browser, Apache, IIS, includes what's called basic authentication, something where we can challenge for a password, and so people can't get to this. Here I haven't set up the authentication, so anybody on the planet could put that URL in and see my synopsis. Now I'm on my host computer. For this, I think whenever you're working with testing and seeing if basic authentication works, you almost need to get off the machine that's hosting the site and try this from another one. It just gets conflicted because we're going to be using logins that are logins on the machine. So for this particular exercise where you're doing and testing authentication, it's better to be off. And a lot of times, as we're going to see, use an incognito or in private browsing. So this is my desktop here. I'm going up into the VM, and it's not too hard really to set up. And I'll walk you through the steps. And so it's really just one of those things that if you do what I do, then you will be okay. So I've gotten my File Explorer here to my website folder, right? And the synopsis folder is what we want to protect. And I've opened up then the IIS and gotten in here. So it's kind of a two-phased or multi-phased process. In IIS, make sure you clicked on that thing that you want to protect. If you wanted to protect the whole site and have people have to log in to see anything on your site, which is not what we want, you would do it at the site level. So I've clicked here on the folder to get that. And what you do is for IIS, there's this authentication, and right now it's got anonymous authentication enabled. Well, we want to disable that. So somebody that hasn't told us who they are can't come in. Well, we still need to provide a door in, so I'd like to enable basic authentication, but you also want to enable Windows authentication. And what that does is say allow Windows logins to who can get to the resource to log in. So that makes it our credential store all of the Windows logins on the computer. And it's that easy just to set up that authentication scheme, take off anonymous, get basic and Windows. But as it stands, so this is why I opened this up, I'm going to right click on Synopsis. The only people who can then log in through a web browser and see that folder, so I've right clicked and I'm coming down to Properties and getting over to Security Properties, are those users who have access to that particular folder. And you're going to find as it stands in Leave, Creator, Owner, iUser, System, and this IIS users, leave those guys. Those are system oriented. But the only two, this one's a person, this is a group that have access to that from outside are T-student or any member of administrators. Okay, and so and I'll even show you then how that is effective. I'm going to copy this URL, but I'm going to go into in private. The reason or an incognito, and the reason I suggest that you go into an incognito window to test all this, and make sure the browser doesn't have some credentials memorized and that kind of thing. But if I try to paste and go to this now, oh, you get challenged for a login. So before you get to see it, you're going to have to give something. And if I type in a Windows login, well, I'll type in a Windows login that does have access, and then it would be when you're trying, it's It's going to be whatever password you set up for your thing. Well, great. So that that worked. It got them in, but they got challenged first for a login. Great. And I can show you. Well, I'll show you a little bit about what happens when somebody who is a Windows login but isn't allowed in needs to get there. But we have a requirement that anybody in group so the way you do security typically is you define a group or groups that have some privilege or maybe lack some privilege that you're going to do. And so what we need to do is be sure that any members of this AIST 2220 subscribers, that's what I was thinking of. So there's this Windows group, so not every Windows login can get in there, but T-student administrator, any member of administrators, and any member of that group can get in there. And there's two member in there. I just call them subs 1 and I write this out in the assignment, but it's just giving me in subs 2. So those are 2 logins on the system and their passwords. And so they can't remote in, so you couldn't use remote desktop. I didn't give them that privilege. And you're going to give them privilege to access yours. And there is one we can work with that not in the group is X, SUBS1. And it's the same, they've got the same password, so they're a window login. Windows login on that server, but we don't want them to be able to get in. And our mechanism is going to be the admins have set up this group with these members, or in general, whoever is a valid subscriber. And this was just one to come up with, well, somebody that's not in the group. Notice that it's a 0 and an exclamation point. All right, so, but how do we make that happen in here? Well, while we're in security on the Synopsys folder, we just want to edit and add, and what we're going to do, notice it's saying, oh, you can add users, groups, or these what are called security principles. Okay. So that now has added this group called AIST 2220 subs, and they have read and execute as a default, list folder, and read. Those are precisely the permissions we need them to have. And so, kind of it's a 2-step. I want Windows basic authentication, disable anonymous on that resource that you're talking about, folder or the root if we wanted the whole site, but we're just doing this guy. And then secondly, go into and use Windows Windows Security. Remember, we did Properties, got to the Security tab, and make sure the group or groups, or perhaps individual users. Usually, we're the owner kind of, so we're there, but you wouldn't want to do individual users because, take them out of the group. Give permissions to groups is the idea, so I applied that, and OK. And so the gestalt is then, or the final proof of the pudding is, I'm going to do this in a new incognito window. Let me copy this and then get back in the incognito window. And we'll even do it, there's so they can still get to the Synopsys index, but if they try to click on one, they get challenged. And I'm going to look at what, we'll see that one that works, so subs 1 and capital P, W, 0, RD, exclamation point, right. Okay, so that person can get in. And it turns out that once they've authenticated in a browser session, and I don't know that I have a 2 out there. But once they've authenticated in a browser session, they can see, I haven't done all my assignments like I have. I guess it's coming back to HTM. But once they've done one, they can go to, my links are a little bit bad. They don't have to re-authenticate. Okay, so that's kind of nice that for the duration of the browser session, they're not challenged every time they go in. If they then I'm going to get a whole new incognito window to then try somebody else getting the thing. And here's a valid user on the server. But they don't work. Now, one thing that happens here, there is really, I don't know that there's any limit to the number of times they can try, but I haven't found it, and I've done about 5, and then I get tired of doing. And it doesn't say, gee, what's wrong, it's that, or there's no password reset. So it doesn't have a lot of the functionality, but it is keeping that person out. And at the end of the thing, if they hit cancel, then they get a 401 unauthorized, okay, to invalid credentials. To me, maybe if that came up after 3 tries or something like that. So in the assignment, I ask you not only to set up the basic Windows authentication, and it's got 2 levels. Basic means have the browser handle putting up that demand for credentials and passing it, and the Windows says I'm going to validate against the Windows store of credentials on the web server. But the second thing I ask you to do is come up with a custom page for the 401 error, and you've done it for 404 and 403. Do it the same way. Invalid credentials. Check your password. Talk to the system admin if you need access to this resource. Whatever is like that. But that's just a handy, quick, and easy way. It doesn't have a lot of depth if you're really doing a professional site, but it's a way to put some protection around your assets. All right. And any issues, as always, just give me a call. Take care.